Some infrastructure in Afghanistan, like new roads, might be irreversible. But progress in areas such as women's rights and democracy may not survive the departure of most international forces in 2014.
There's no doubt that there have been some things succeeded. You know, we've built who knows how many schools. Women have, they're serving in parliament. They have rights here and there. There's roads built. There has been some infrastructure done, and beyond question, there's some areas, especially in the southern part of the country, where it's more secure now than it was. No question about that. Those are all true statements, but they also, almost none of them matter. Virtually everywhere that we have picked our boots up, and this is open source, this is not classified information, you can read this online, the Taliban immediately comes back in to take over.
It's not like we've failed to achieve this worthy objective of democracy. We actually sold the Afghans down the river, in a sense, because we've put in place this very centralised, very controlling government that has no plans to listen to what they want. And I think that's a really significant problem in Afghanistan. It's not like a minor issue that we got to fix. It's the heart of the problem.
I mean, I want to see democracy everywhere, but I'm not starry-eyed enough to think you're going to have it flourishing in Afghanistan in 10 years' time. We were never into that. We were always into retaliating and denying the capacity for al-Qaeda to come again, and we were successful in that, very successful.
But the ongoing conflict has meant that, very far from being helped, a growing number of ordinary Afghans are paying the ultimate price. Last year, the number of civilian deaths went up for the 5th year in a row. More Afghan civilians were killed last year alone than the number of people who lost their lives in 2001's September 11 attacks. The UN estimates the Taliban were responsible for 77% of those deaths.
The population is the soft target for the Taliban, and throughout history, insurgents have always preferred to target members of their own community that collaborate with the outsider, rather than target the outsider directly. And that's still the pattern in Afghanistan.
It doesn't matter to the Afghan people whether they kill them or the Taliban kills them or whether our accidents kill them. We brag about, oh, it's only 23% is the coalition and 77% is the Taliban. They don't care. And you can read open source material from the local media that they confirm this. It doesn't matter to them who does the killing. It matters to them that we can't stop it.
I mean, for them consistently to say, yes, we honorable can leave in 2014 and we're not leaving behind a mess, you have to say, yes, we're on track. Yes, we're making progress. Yes, things are getting better. And sometimes you think they're taking crazy pills, or you kind of want to smoke what they're smoking, you know. But sometimes I would like to get a general and sit to him and say, do you really believe that? Or is it something you have to say because you have now those years left and you want to get you guys out?
Objective 5. Train Afghanistan's army and police to secure their country. Since President Obama named 2014 as an exit date, the NATO mission has focused on increasing and improving local forces so they can take the lead in securing Afghanistan. The stated goal is to leave behind 195,000 competent Afghan soldiers and 157,000 police. But the challenges are formidable. Afghanistan's army is plagued by corruption, desertion, illiteracy and drug use. The reputation of the police is worse.
I think we've made massive progress, but I think we still have a huge way to go. And it's certainly not a done deal that we're going to get to where we need to be by the end of 2014. I'm quite sceptical about that.
The goal for us is to train a single brigade. Now, a brigade of the Afghan army is around 2,000, 2,500 people, and it comprises about 4 groups called Kandaks of about 600 or so. And that's essentially the fighting force that we're trying to train up. Now, that force is patchy in terms of its quality and the training it's received. Part of it's going okay. Parts of it have a long way to go. But it is, as an organisation, moving in the right direction.
There has been progress, but as late as last October, no Afghan police units and only one army battalion were judged by the US Defence Department to be effective without international support.
I mean, tell me where the logic is in this. What we have failed to do in 10 full years of war, now into the 11th year, we've already started the return of troops to the tune of 10,000. 23,000 are physically in the process of getting ready to leave. And what we have not been able to do in 10 years, now then we're going to say with a continual bleeding off of troops and the money that goes along with it, the Afghan guys are going to accomplish what they could not do with our presence there without our presence there.
Australian Special Forces in Uruzgan have been criticised for working not with government security forces, but the private militia of a local strongman and now police chief, Matiullah Khan.
Sometimes the people we deal with are not attractive people. Sometimes they've got to where they are by getting blood on their hands. It would be impossible to find someone in Afghanistan, I would judge, who hasn't got some blood on their hands somewhere if they're in a position of power. We just have to accept that. It's ugly, it's unattractive, it's un-Australian, but that's the way it is. So we need to work with it.
You can't say we're pro-government, we're pro-governance, and then you work with groups like that.
Suzanne Schmeidel was recently contracted by AusAid to assess local perceptions of Australia's efforts in Uruzgan. She is not optimistic about the province's chances after 2014.
A local colleague of mine, when I discussed with him about whether Matiullah would be able to hold, he said that he'd think that the Taliban might be able to retake Uruzgan in 2 weeks after the Australians withdraw.
All the evidence suggests that the Afghan security forces will not be strong enough to defeat or contain the Taliban after 2014, the way things are going. There have been so many cases in recent months, both of attacks by Afghan soldiers on Western forces, but also so many cases of rape, extortion, kidnapping, murder by the Afghan police. That isn't to say that the Afghan state will collapse completely, but in my view, without massive Western support, this army will not be capable of holding most of the Pashtun areas against Taliban attack.
Australian troops have been attacked by the Afghan forces they are training 3 times now. Incidents known in the military as green-on-blue attacks. There have been about 30 such incidents across the coalition since 2007, resulting in 80 deaths. 75% of them have happened since President Obama announced an exit strategy.
The people have thought, well, the international community's leaving, I've got to show that I'm not a collaborator. And the way that I do that is I turn on the international community now to demonstrate that anti-coalition credential while there's still time. And I think that not only explains green on blue, it also explains some of the behaviour we've seen from very senior Afghan leaders, including President Karzai.
Hamid Karzai, who is due to step down as president in 2014, has repeatedly flagged his interest in talks with the Taliban he now calls his brothers. 10 years ago, the Taliban were regarded as an enemy barely worth talking to. Now negotiating with them may be the only plausible path to peace.
There can be no political solution to this war unless it's an Afghan political solution. We can't have a peace agreement between Brussels and Kandahar. We need to have a peace agreement between Kabul and Kandahar. The very fact that now the Taliban is thinking about talks is a very encouraging one. But they will only be willing to think about talks as long as they believe that we're not going to just simply walk away 100% from Afghanistan, either in 2012 or in 2014.
But the Taliban says there can be no settlement unless international forces leave.
If the United States is determined to keep military bases and special forces in Afghanistan for a long period after 2014, then yes, that will make a settlement with the Taliban impossible. The Taliban have stated repeatedly that they cannot possibly agree to that.
And so a war soon to become Australia's longest continues with no imminent victory or political solution in sight.
We are doing all we can do in the military side, and we're actually doing a pretty good job. But to what end? Where are we heading? And we're not, I don't see the political solution that needs to be in place to now allow us to leave in 2014. So that to my mind is the real problem, and it's much bigger and harder to deal with, actually, than the military stuff.
To be frank, it's a bit heartbreaking. It has been a bit heartbreaking for me and some of my colleagues and friends to see how potentially a very, very good opportunity and chance in Afghanistan was squandered.
If you're just tossing away life, whether Afghan life or American life or Australian life, if there's not some benefit to the coalition, to the country, to the people of Afghanistan, then you've got to ask, why are we doing this?
Why are we still doing this? A question that gets harder to answer for public consumption as the years roll by, but still confronts Defence Minister Stephen Smith, who's just come back from Afghanistan and joins me now. Stephen Smith, it seems to me that it's not just